Hey guys, how are you? I hope you had a good week. So last week we started our hummingbird drawing, and this week we're gonna actually paint it in. So I need you to get your watercolors, and just a thin brush I think is fine, and your water and a paper towel, okay? And we will finish our hummingbird today, okay? And guys, I am giving the instructions for, for the version that I did so that you can make yours look like mine. If you want to change it up at all, feel free. And if you just really want to make it simple and have fun with it and not stress over it, just get some watercolors and have fun, okay? But I wanted to explain how I did mine. So if you feel like it's just too much, go ahead and fast forward or just turn it off and just have fun doing watercolor, okay? But I would love to see how your projects turn out, so please send them to me. And I hope you guys have fun with this, okay? I'll see you soon. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna start with my lightest color, which is gonna be this here yellow. And I'm going to just kind of go over where my ink stops on his belly, because his belly is mostly white. But I just wanted to kind of have it fade into that. Okay, and actually these are my colors over here. I just use this regular yellow, but most of the time I'm going to either use this kind of yellowy orange or this orange over here, just because they stand out a little bit more. So I just did a little bit of that regular yellow. Now I'm going to put a little bit of this on. Okay, so this is that yellow orange color. I'll put that up here, like around his eye too. Maybe a little bit on his beak. I also want to put a little bit of that in this area. I'm trying to use the tip of my brush to make some individual strokes in there, but if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Kind of like that. And while I'm at it, I could add a little bit of this color in on my leaf, maybe over here too. And I'm going to take some regular yellow, the yellow over here, and I'm going to put a little bit of that over here between these feathers. While I'm waiting for that to dry, let's go over here and do this nest. So I want to just dampen my brush, but I don't want it soaking wet. I just want to have it a little bit damp, and I want to go over these eggs, just the eggs. Okay, now I have this color here that's kind of like a very, very dark blue. It looks black, but it's actually like a really dark blue. I'm going to add some water to that. If you guys don't have this exact set and you don't happen to have a color similar to that, you could either use just regular black, or you could use a dark blue if you wanted to. So now that I've put some water in there, I'm going to take the tip of my brush and just put a tiny bit of that on there. And then I'm actually going to tap it off a little bit because I just want the tiniest little bit of paint. And I'm going to put it around the outer edge, this left edge. And then around on this side as well. Actually, you know what? I think it probably should be more of a gray. Mostly because these eggs actually are white, and because blue eggs do exist in the world, I don't want these eggs to be confused with blue eggs. So maybe I will just take a little bit of regular black and put it like just around the edges. Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush off entirely and try to blend these colors in so it's a nice smooth transition. And same down here. I want to get some of this green. Always make sure that you start by adding water into your watercolors and swishing that water around to get the paint activated. Okay, but I actually don't want too much paint on my brush, so I'm going to just dab it on my paper towel when I'm done. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put this on this left side, kind of to the left of the yellow, and overlapping the yellow just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. Now I'm going to take some purple and I'm going to color in this white part of these feathers. And if you happen to get some color that goes outside of where you want it to, I mean, I don't have a whole lot, but I do have a tiny bit right here that I'm not quite happy with because it went outside. Really, it's not a crisis, but I'm just trying to show you how to fix it. If you do something that you don't like, clean your brush off real well, and then with some water, just kind of go over that spot. And that will help to dilute it and spread that color out. Okay, and then after that, you take a little bit of paper towel and go over it just to dry up the water. Okay, so that's how you fix little things like that. Also, if you have way too much water like on your image and you just want to dry it a little bit, paper towel to the rescue. Just dab it real quick. Okay, so there's my hummingbird. Let me do a little bit more on his tail and his other feather. So I'm just taking a little bit of this purple. I'm going to throw another color in too, but I want to get this one down first and let it dry a little bit. Let's go back to our nest now. Okay, I'm going to take my dark orange, and if you guys have a brown, you could use that as well. I actually don't have a brown, and I'm okay using orange. So I'm going to use a darker orange, though. Get some water in there, and wipe my brush off a little bit. And I'm going to go around the outer edge of these eggs with that orangey color. I'm going to try really hard not to touch the eggs. Okay, so that's my orange there. You know what? I can put a little bit of orange on my branch here too. Again, I don't want it too soupy wet. And you don't have to do the whole thing like in a big solid stroke. Just do like little dabs of color. I think that gives you a better look when you're done, because it's not just quite like solid. It gives some like definition. Okay, and then up here on my nest again, I'm just going to put a couple of strokes of this orangey color just around in random places. And while we're using the orange, I might as well put some up here. Let me go this way. There is no rhyme or reason to where I'm putting it. I don't want to fill in the whole thing, but I'm just putting it in a few places. So I want to use a couple different colors. So I'm just going to leave it kind of like that. I also want to put a tiny bit of this orange over here on my hummingbird. We kind of did that yellow and that little bit of fake orange, kind of the orangey yellow. But now that it's dried some, I want to put a little bit more of this stronger orange in there. Right kind of between the yellow and the green. Okay, and when you're done, if you want to blend it a little bit, rinse your brush off and then dry it on the paper towel, and it'll still be a little bit damp. And then you can kind of just go in and kind of just smooth out the edges. I'm just kind of wiggling my brush along the edges to kind of move the color a little bit. Okay. Okay, so now I'm done with that color, and I want to get some green, my light green that I have over here. Okay. Now this is going to be for my moss. I don't want this to be too watery because I want to be able to control where it goes. When it's too wet, it kind of has a tendency to run. So I want to have water, but not too much. And I'm just going to go around and plop this color down. There were some places that I had kind of designated to be moss, so certainly I'll put that there. But the moss is kind of woven in, you know, the way that these nests are made. They kind of weave all of these materials together. So it's very possible to have strokes of moss here and there. You know, maybe it's not on the outer layer, maybe it's a little bit more inside, but it's kind of woven in with some of the other things. So I just want to have a little bit of green, kind of just going around my nest, okay? Obviously not the whole thing, but just a little bit of it. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bluish black color that I had before and dab it on my paper towel. And then I'm going to go around in some places with this. And this is a little bit more of a shadowy color, so maybe we use this a little bit more like on the left side, where it's a little bit more of a shadow. Or on the bottom. Okay, and now I'm going to use kind of a blue-green color to fill in this lichen. Now that's a little bit brighter than I wanted, so I'm going to dilute that with some water. It's supposed to be kind of like a blue-green color, but not like super vibrant, kind of a blue-green-gray color. Okay, and then maybe I want to put little bits of my darker green in. Okay, now for my branches, I'm going to use kind of a blue-green. So I'm going to use just a tiny bit of it. And I'm not going to put it over the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of skip my brush along. And just kind of, I don't know, just kind of drag it. You know, do like a little bit, lift. And then I'm going to go with more of a my blue-black color. If you don't have a blue-black, just go with a plain, like a black, but just dilute it so that it's not too strong. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with this color. And we're kind of using the tip of our brush here, okay? We don't want to make it real heavy. I think I'm just sort of wiggling or pulling and dragging. Okay, then I'm also going to use this color a little bit on this wood, my actual branch. I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to try to just do like little bits of it, and maybe what I'll do is I'll go over it with some water when I'm done. I can try to lift a little bit of it maybe. I have one last step. Actually, two last steps. I want to get a little bit of green first, some of this real green. Dry my brush off just a tiny bit. And now I'm going to go over that with that color too. So we're going to have 3 colors. Okay, now, dry brush, oh, okay, clean brush. I just dabbed it on my paper towel, so it's still wet, but it's not overly wet. And I'm just gonna kind of go over this, just to soften it a little bit, or blend the colors. It shouldn't be soupy wet, but wet enough to make this bleed a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit more orange in my nest up here. Just kind of mix it up a little bit. I feel like it's getting a little bit too green. Okay, and now I'm going to take my wet brush. I'm going to go over this branch just with some water, and then whatever happens is going to happen. Let it do its own thing. I'm going to take my black color again, and I'm going to make it really, really wet. And just sort of go down the spine, like the middle of these little feathers here. Then I'm going to rinse my brush off, and with just water, I'm going to soften it. And I might even lift some of that color up at the top because I feel like that's a little bit too dark, especially out here, right there. I kind of go back and forth between putting water on the paper first or doing it with the paint. If I want it to blend a lot, I'll put the water on first. But I don't really want this to blend too much. At the same time, I want it to be soft. So that's why I'm kind of going back and forth between my water and my paints. And if at any time I feel like it's just too much paint, then I try to lift it off as soon as I can. Okay, so that's one side. Maybe this side I'll put some water down first, but not the whole thing, just like on the center of my leaves. Here's a little buggy. Let's move him over here. Okay. You know what, I think I like that better. Putting the water down first. I was afraid that it would make too big of a mess, but I think it works all right. So kind of like that. We just want it to be really soft. These are fuzzy feathers. Okay. And now the feathers up here are not fuzzy. Those are nice and strong. So we're going to take some green now, my light green, and we're just going to go for it up here. I'm going to start at the center and work up. And then we can also use maybe some of this darker green. But we don't want to go over the whole thing. Okay, just like pick a few places. Okay, and that is done. Actually, I'm going to take that dark green while I have it, and I'm going to try to do this pattern that we have on our feathers down here. The kind of curved line thing. I'm going to try to make those curved lines with this green here. Also bring some of this up into his head. Since we're using green, let's go ahead and stay with the green. I'm going to start with my light green. I'm just going to put some water on it, but you know what? I'm going to dab that so it's not drippy. And I'm just going to brush it in. And again, not the whole thing. I am going to make sure I get the left edge with a little bit of this lighter, because if the light, I think, is kind of coming from that direction. So I'm going to use some of my darker green. Just, you know, wherever, in a few spots, wherever I feel like putting it. Okay. And then I'm going to use a little bit of my blue-black again to make some shadows. And this I'm going to have really watery because, again, I don't want it to be too solid. I want it to be kind of playful and runny. Okay. And then we just have the stem and the flowers. Stem and the flowers. You know what? While I've got this yellow out, I just put some yellow on my stem. Let me put some yellow on my flowers too. Again, not the whole thing. I definitely don't want to make it too yellow. But I think it's fun to have a little bit of color poking through in places. Okay, and I actually want that to dry up a little bit. So you know what, let's work a little bit on our background. You guys can really do whatever you want with your background. I'm going to show you what I did just because I feel like I should. I took my blue-black color, but I watered it down a lot. And then I dabbed my brush, and I wanted to kind of make like an underline under a hummingbird. So I just kind of took my paint and just kind of did like a stroke like this. And then I let it kind of fade out. So over here, how I'm going to make that fade out is I'm going to dry off my brush and add some water in to let that just sort of soften. I want this top edge to stay strong, so I'm not going to touch this top edge. But if we put a little bit of water down here, that'll just sort of fade out. And then for the whole rest of the background, I just sort of made it up. I picked colors that I liked. I think I wet the background first and made sure not to touch any of my images, because if you touch anything that you've already painted, you will mess it up. You will pull the water or the color away from it. And I didn't want to do that. So I think I just sort of like wet my paper and then used really soft, watery, like I used a little bit of orange and that blue-gray that I have, or the blue-black that I have. And I just used the very, more of the watery part right here. And just sort of put it in for a little bit of background color. But I didn't want it to be anything like really hard or solid. So I would just like kind of let it fade. And I used just a combination of those two colors. If I wanted there to be a shadow, I would use more of the blue. And if I just wanted it to be kind of creamy and sunny, then I would use the other one. And just kind of run it around. And you could also overlap those two colors if you wanted to. The orange and the blue. Like over here, I know that I did some of the blue-gray. Now I'm being careful not to touch my leaf. But now I can go in and take like a little bit of this and kind of make a shadow. Now what I can do is later I can push that a little bit closer to the leaf if I want to, after the leaf has dried more. But for right now, I can just leave it like that. And I didn't want any hard edges, so just kind of fade it out with the water. See, over here I had some orange. Actually, over here I know I had some of that shadow color as well. So why don't I get some of that? And then just fade it out with the water. I want to go over the word hummingbird with some orange, being really, really careful not to touch that blue line down there. Then I'm going to take some clean water and just sort of blend that away up on the top. Lift a little bit of that, blend it out here on the edge. Throw some more orange in here. And now, before I get too carried away, let's finish up our stem and finish up our flower. So I'm going to throw some green on here now. And then I'm going to get some solid red. And I haven't actually used red yet, so I've got to water that down some. Dab my brush and come back in and reload. And basically, the flowers are supposed to be red, so probably as much as possible, I want this red to show. But I can either, put it on top of these other colors or let them show in some places. After this all dries, I can also do a second coat of my red to make it a little bit stronger. And with my second coat, I'm going to use very little water. Actually, right now I'm using very little water too. But with my second coat, I can make it a truer red. If I go over it just one more time. We also want to make sure that we get the inside of these little flowers, like right in here. You don't want to go over the yellow center, but like around the sides, like that. And there we go, guys. So listen, I really hope that you enjoyed this. This is a little bit longer than most of my lessons. I thought it was really fun though, and you absolutely don't need to make yours as detailed as I made mine. And if you chose not to, that's completely fine. But since I kind of went, I think I outdid myself a little bit with my sample, and I really went to town on it. And I wanted to be able to show you guys what I did so that if you wanted to try, you could. Okay. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. And I can't wait to see the images that you guys came up with. I know you guys worked hard on this. And no matter which version you chose, I'm excited to see what you did. All right. So, okay, I'm going to stop painting now. I'm having too much fun. So, you guys have a good week. I can't wait to see your images. And I'll talk to you guys soon, okay? Take care. Bye.